Hello everyone, and today I'm going to show you 5 tips on how to be a better investor. These are tips that I embrace myself, that I have copied shamelessly from other better investors than me. And if you stay till the end of the video, I'm going to show you tip number 6, in which it has really improved how I become a better investor, and hopefully these tips can improve your investing ability too. Tip number 1. Find your ikigai. Now, this is a concept introduced by the Japanese, which simply means a reason for being. There are 4 pillars within your life. One is what you love. Second is what the world needs, what the world is willing to pay for. Number 3 is what can you be paid for, the skills, the experience that you have. Number 4 is what you're good at. Some of us are just talented to be musicians, and some of us, like me, are totally not. So being at ikigai just really means the overlap of these 4 pillars: what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you're good at. And once you find that ikigai or that equilibrium, you will find that you are delighted, you're fulfilled, you feel compelled to do better, and you keep on trying to strive to improve yourself because you feel comfortable. Not to the point of being complacent, but you feel comfortable because that's a spot where you have growth, you love what you do, you have a certain passion, you're also paid well enough. And how do you really apply this? I don't want this tip just to be a concept. Like, for example, in Malaysia, a lot of the multi-bagger companies are actually within the semiconductor and electronic space. But you're not keen on understanding semicon or electronics, but because there's so much noises or influence to say, oh, but if you're not buying into semicon, you're missing out. True, but if you're just forcing yourself to read it, then do you think you can really sustain that effort? And finding your ikigai may be something like, okay, I work for a fast-moving consumer goods company, and I'm pretty good at it. I kind of like the nature of the work, and I'm getting paid while at the same time learning. Or you may be working for an advertising agency, but this advertising agency specializes in maybe automotive. And the nature of the work compels you to understand that. Why not use that to your advantage? So this being in this ikigai state actually is very related to tip number 2, which I'll share later. But by being there, you feel compelled. No one has to push you. No one has to, force you to do anything because you're in this equilibrium state, for the lack of a better word. So tip number 1 on how to be a better investor: find your ikigai. So tip number 2, find your unfair advantage. The picture I'm showing to you is actually a sumo wrestler against a young boy, and obviously the young boy has the sumo wrestler has complete unfair advantage as compared to the little boy. Just by sheer weight alone, this guy literally can push the boy out of the ring very easily, right? So how does this apply to investing? You may work in a field where it is very niche and not many players or not many observers outside of the industry understand this. For example, I used to work in oil and gas. It's a very, even though it's a very globally renowned field, but not many people get to work in it. Not many people get to do what I do, especially, things like managing contracts, understanding the workflow, understanding the value chain. Why am I not using that as my unfair advantage to understand the industry, to understand the players, to understand the value chain? And here we go. The industry that we're in, we often ignore it, and we try to find another sexy industry that seems to be the up-and-coming theme. For example, if I try to move into biotech and try to understand, clinical trials and try to understand DNA sequencing, am I not at a disadvantage as compared to those who are already in the field or they have built up expertise over the years? And I feel that this is a very underrated tip. Why do I feel that? Because even though I'm an electrical trained engineer, it took me 5 years and counting to really understand the semiconductor and the electronic industry value chain. And for me, I feel like I'm barely scratching the surface. So reflect on this point or this tip compared to your scenario. You may be in, let's just say, the milk industry, or you may be in the textile industry. That already gives you a huge unfair advantage. Rather than trying to learn a new industry or a new theme, why not focus on what you already know, build on that, leverage on that? And here's the funny thing, you feel that, I need to learn some new industry, but then why are you not starting from a higher base? And once you already start from a higher base, let's just say you're from the textile industry and you understand the parameters to evaluate the textile industry, do you realize, you wouldn't realize it in the beginning, but after a while you realize that because of the skill sets that you have acquired to analyze the textile industry, when you move from industry to industry, it does get easier. Trust me. I mean, I've been there, done that. Many great investors has also expressed similar, conclusions as well. So don't worry. Start with your unfair advantage, and then slowly or progressively moved out of your industry or niche to find some other industries. Then you realize that, it's better to stay within a certain circle of competence. So again, tip number 2, use your unfair advantage. Tip number 3, your network is your net worth. I'm pretty sure you heard of this phrase that says you are an aggregate or accumulation of 5 of your best friends. This picture that I'm showing to you is a very, very clear example of the network that has emboldened or empowered these guys to actually achieve much, much more than when they first started off. So this is what we call the PayPal Mafia. Some of you may know them. Some of you may have heard of them so many times that, why is John repeating this? I'm just helping those that have never heard of this PayPal Mafia network. So this is the group of people that worked together to develop PayPal in its early days. If you're not familiar with PayPal, they are one of the largest payment service providers in the world. And Peter Thiel, managing partner, was one of the main co-founders. He right now is the managing partner of his own fund, the Founders Fund. The other guy you may very clearly recognize is actually Reid Hoffman. He's the co-founder and executive chairman of LinkedIn today. I'm pretty sure most of you having a corporate career would definitely have used LinkedIn at least once, right? Then you've got Stephen Chen, Jawed Karim, and Chad Hurley, all 3 co-founders of YouTube. So as you can see, right, they're all well connected, all based out of Silicon Valley. That's why so many expatriates try to get themselves into Silicon Valley, one of the most expensive places to stay in the US. But why do people go there? Because of a chance to get into this network. Now, you may be asking, but John, I've just started off my career. I don't know anyone. But that's where creativity and that's where a little bit of street smarts can actually help you build that network. Be interested in someone, be helpful, be available, and show up, because the ironic thing about it is that we feel a lot of successful people don't want to nurture or groom or give people a chance. And contrary to popular belief and contrary to my own naiveness when I was young, a lot of very successful people look forward to meeting young, hungry entrepreneurs or people who want to start out their entrepreneurial journey, because they've been through that. They appreciate the toughness of being an entrepreneur. And even by them helping open doors for you, you'll be surprised how many people are willing to do that. But you have to prove your worth first. So tip number 3, network is your net worth, especially as an investor. Tip number 4, stay curious. Steve Jobs had this phrase, stay hungry, stay foolish. Now, one example of him applying this was during his undergraduate days at Dartmouth College. He actually took calligraphy class. And at that point, did he knew exactly how he would apply it or use it? I don't think so. But because he took that calligraphy class, he understood aesthetics, he understood form factors, and that's why Apple had beautiful fonts till this day. I mean, they are the leaders or pioneers in aesthetics, especially when it comes to graphical user interface. So at that point of time, I mean, who would have thought that it would be useful application in the future? And similarly to you, you might be doing something that at that point of time may not be relevant, but because of your curiosity, because of you reading a bit wider comparatively to what you're doing, that's where in the future it may just click. I have another analogy for this. Think of it think of life as a jigsaw puzzle. You're not given all the pieces at one point of time. You're probably given, let's say, 30, 40% at that point of time. But because you went a little bit out of your way, picked up a piece that may not be relevant at this point, and sooner or later in life, another piece just appeared. But because you took the time and stayed curious and took that other piece that was not relevant probably 2-3 years ago, it now kind of clicked. And that's how you become faster at building mental models. I give you a personal example for me. When I was interning in KL, I was working for one of the largest maintenance and operations subcontractor for the Water Utilities Board of Selangor. And during the night, rather than just buying DVDs and watching movies just to kill time, I actually took programming class. Yes, even though in engineering school I already had programming class, but it was just 1 or 2 modules, and I just wanted to understand if I could code, could I take it as a part-time gig and make some money out of it. I was even considering tutoring, but then I figured between tutoring, providing tuition services, or learning something, I rather prize that I learn something that could be useful in the future and pays more. If you tutor, you're teaching probably from 4 math, like for me, from 4 maths. But then am I growing my skill set that it's more, more monetizable in the future? So again, tip number 4, stay curious. You never know. Once you venture or widen your knowledge base, especially early in your career, it could really, really help you in the future. Tip number 5, very underrated, known but not applied, note-taking skills. I've not seen a successful person not having an ability to take notes. There was this very funny picture of a Malaysian delegation that went to Europe, and they were at a conference, and the entire Malaysian delegation, the minister, the very senior officials of that ministry, and seated on the other side of the table was actually their European counterparts. And their European counterparts came with huge manuals, and they were all taking notes, whereas the Malaysian delegation, there was not a single notebook on the table. So obviously I'm not going to name the ministry, but for some of you who've seen the photo, you obviously know exactly what I mean. These are 3 people: Bill Gates, Sheryl Sandberg, and Richard Branson. Obviously billionaires in their own right, and they all share a common trait: note-taking. Especially so in investing. If you're going to attend an AGM, an analyst briefing, a results briefing, or you're listening to a video and watching me share some notes on companies, don't you find it amusing if you don't take down notes and you're going to remember everything and try to make an investment decision just based on off memory 2-3 years down the road? That's exactly my point, because once you learn something and you're not note-taking, how are you going to piece together all these things? You don't want to use your brain as a memory space. You want to use your brain to connect the dots. But if you're using it so much to store stuff, how do you find space to actually connect the dots? And that's why note-taking is so important, because once you refer back to your notes, let's say 2-3 years ago, if you're studying a company, like I told you earlier, I studied semicon. I prize my note-taking skills as well as my ability to have what I call a content management system to accelerate my learning. I actually use Notion very, very heavily. And the reason why I use Notion is because it can connect a lot of dots with just keywords. You see, so it's not just note-taking, it's also indexing and connecting. And that's where your learning acceleration gets faster and faster. And I hope that it's not so much just the ability to understand this concept and the importance of it, but also the discipline to implement it. Today, some people say, I don't like writing, I don't like a leather-bound book. Some people say, oh, I just love it. I love the traditional pen and paper. Whatever it is, to each his own. But if you don't take notes and you don't connect, that's where you learn much, much slower as compared to people who do. So tip number 5, note-taking. Thanks for staying till now. So I'm going to give you bonus tip number 6, which is create versus consume. Now, most of us would love to consume. You love to consume your favorite movies, food, books. But unless and until you apply that information that you've gotten, it remains just that, information. But the moment you apply it, it becomes knowledge. And when you make mistakes out of it and learn from it, then it becomes wisdom. So instead of just consuming, and I'm not saying that you should stop consuming, you should try to create. It may not be for public information, it may not be for public consumption, but it can be for you, yourself. And related to tip number 5, note taking. The moment you write or to clarify or to connect the dots of all these separate notes, jumbled up notes, that's where you realize that your thoughts crystallize over time. And when the thoughts crystallize over time, you start to form a habit of asking sharper questions, better questions. And when you have sharper questions, that's where your clarity of thought trumps over those very average thinkers. Because the moment you create, you start getting sharper and sharper yourself, reassessing the mental models that you have formed, the biases that you have formed over the years, and the awareness of bad habits. And that's where once you create, all this comes into clarity, comes into awareness. And I think so underrated. Again, as I said, doesn't need to be public. It can be for self-consumption, but you need somehow to create. Notice how people, when they write projects or whatsoever, you can choose 2 options. Either you just do it for the sake of doing it, but you do it because you want to understand and you want to be a better version of yourself. That's where I feel by creating, you will be a much better investor. All good or great investors actually write. They write a letter to the investor, they actually write a journal, they actually write probably even a newsletter. So tip number 6, don't just consume, create. I hope the 5+1 tip that I shared with you today helps you to be a greater investor. I hope this video has benefited you as well. And if it did, give me a like, subscribe to my channel. And if you want more content like this, please hit that notification bell so that you know when new videos are out for you. And I'm going to start a new section or a new genre for the videos. It's going to be an AMA, Ask Me Anything. So if you post questions or comments in the comment section below, I know there's a lot of requests asking for companies. The reason why I don't go into some of it is because I don't want you to have a biased opinion or a perception about it without doing your own homework. And but at the same time, I do realize that sometimes you may not be exposed to the right way of how to evaluate a company. So please, if you have any questions, do put them in the AMA below, comment section, and I'll take a look at them. I'll screen through them quickly and probably give you my guiding methods of how you would quickly evaluate the company yourself so that you can make your own decisions. I'll see you guys in the next video.